Hello, my name is Dr. Stacy Jones, and you're listening and watching Growing Calm and Connection. So, in this session, we're going to be focusing on why the emphasis on calm and connection, and what is this growing thing? Why do we talk about this as something that you grow, and if that's the case, how do you actually grow it? So the reason why we focus on calm and connection is that it is the pivot on which all change occurs. Yeah, as a therapist, I have found over the last, 12 to 15 years that I've been doing therapy that it's the common denominator of what makes change in people's lives. There's some things that might first appear as fundamental to change. Like, for instance, when we're dealing with a stressor, we tend to focus on how do we change that stressor? How do we make it go away? How do we de-intensify it? How do we, this or that? Sometimes that stressor is a situation. Sometimes that stressor is a person. Sometimes that stressor is more of an internal process. And I found actually, if we step back and we focus first on how do we grow calm and connection in the presence of the stressor, then we're on a different playing field and we've got so many more options. And the reality is that changing any other scenario is really dependent on first changing those two things, calm and connection, in the presence of those stressors. And so the reason why we're focusing on it is because it's core to any change that you're trying to create in your life, enhancing a sense of calm and connection. And we're going to kind of walk through what that kind of looks like. What do we mean by connection? It's not typically what we think of necessarily, but so yeah, they're core to everything. And the reality is that none of us, I don't honestly know anybody. I don't know that you do, but I'm going to ask you this question. Do you know anyone who says they have too much calm and connection in their lives? They have too much of it. They can't get it to they can't get it out of their lives. They need a break from it. I'm guessing no, you don't know anyone that says they have too much of it. But let me ask you this. Do you know anyone that says they have enough calm and connection? And I'm going to say that's a very limited few, if any. I'm willing to make a bet that for you, the answer is no. You don't have enough calm and you don't have enough connection. In fact, you feel stressed and disconnected most of the time. You feel overwhelmed by your challenges and you feel alone in your challenges most of the time. And I think that is true for almost all of us, independent of age, gender, any type of demographic feature. Again, this is a biological thing. So critical that we have these things, and so rarely do we feel that they're fully met, that we have enough of them, or that we even have them at all. And so that's what this is all about, is helping us know how to grow these things in our lives. One thing that's interesting about the fight or flight response is not only calm and connection is not only at the root of every presenting issue. So when I say presenting issue, I'm saying, as people, so much of what I'm going to be saying to you is kind of with my, my therapist hat on. As a therapist, I've had so many people come and talk to me about, at this point, to be honest, that there's not a lot that I haven't discussed with someone or seen someone struggle through. And in terms of creating change, I have found that it's really at the root of every person's progress. So when I look back on those that I've had the honor to work with, and I'm looking at what was the core thing that really made impact for them. When was it that their brain started to bounce back and resiliency really started to grow in their lives? Because we don't arrive at resiliency, we grow it. We take these incremental steps towards it. And I found for every single one of them, it's when their brain was able to get more access, easier access, more real-time access to calm and connection. And then everything else starts to kind of settle into place. There's going to be some things we can't change about our circumstances. We're all in that boat. But we're going to see that our brain shifts around those circumstances that are unchangeable in a different way when we have more calm and connection in our lives. Um, One of the things that I have come to believe is that I'm a trauma specialist. You know, I love researching trauma. I've been doing that since for a very, very long time. And the whole idea that we move beyond our trauma, that we let the past go, that we don't allow it to affect our future or our present. To be honest, I don't neurophysiologically, I don't buy any of that. What I've come to understand through all the different research I've done with neuroplasticity and how the brain changes and grows over time is that we don't get over our problems. We don't get past, we don't move beyond our past, we integrate it. And what I mean by that is that we learn to have different responses neurologically to those stressors. So that way, instead of feeling like we have to like run away from them or push them away or find a way to get those problems out of our lives, we're able to simply provide support around them. You know, it's not to say that certain things don't need to leave our lives, especially unhealthy or toxic relationships. We have to be very self-protective, but even in trying to heal from the memory of all of that, it's not about getting your your brain to a space where it doesn't think about it anymore. It's more about getting it to a space where when it thinks about and experiences the problems, instead of going to a place of panic and disconnection, it goes to a place of calm and connection. That's when we start to get bounce back in our lives. That's when we start to build resiliency. And that's when we make that shift in our brain and engage the parasympathetic part of our brain, the calming centers of our brain that help us move forward and through our challenges in a different way. And again, that's kind of what we're all about, is providing that resource, that support to you in real time to calm your brain down in the moment, and move towards connection whenever possible. But the reality is that we grow these things in our lives. You know, we tend to be quite critical about our ability to do this. We tell ourselves all sorts of untrue things like, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at calming down. I can't calm down. I'm not good at being connected. I'm not good at being vulnerable. It's not about being good or not good, or being able to do it or not do it. We're just each in different phases in terms of that growth process. And, you know, that self-dialogue of our capacity to do these things, that is a big, you know, we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to connect with yourself internally. So that way you're not pushing away your own vulnerability, or pushing against it. We're also going to talk about how you can turn towards others and their vulnerability, and again, not push away or against their vulnerability. But the reality is that we're always on a spectrum of it, you know, of either moving towards growing it more in our lives, or it's starting to fade out and dissipate, kind of atrophy, just like a muscle. All of us have muscles. The strength of those muscles has to do with the amount of exercise that it gets, not so much about innate capacity. And so we can always get better at growing these things in our lives, and they can also always atrophy if we're not consistently doing the things that grow them. So they need a lot of nurture. They need a lot of support in real time. And that's, again, what our whole focus as a company and our passion is trying to help you know how to get access to those things, and us being able to be one of those resources for you. So going back a little bit to the neuroplasticity of the brain, we used to think the brain was like a machine, right? It had these different parts that it did. And just like a machine, those parts were pretty rigid. You know, this part of the brain does this, and this part of the brain does that. And they don't have a lot of capacity to change their jobs. We found that that's not true, actually. You can teach an old dog new tricks at any given age, and you can change your brain at any given age. Just like a muscle, the brain gets good at what it does a lot of. So you can change the size of different features of your brain. And they've done studies on that show that after trauma has been processed and after people have engaged in certain behaviors and experiences, again, it's not thoughts, experiences, not just thoughts, the size of different parts of their brain grow or get smaller. So through the activities that you do, you can grow different parts of your brain. So what we do a lot of tends to get, that part of our brain tends to get bigger, it tends to get faster, and it tends to get more coordinated. And that's why we get better at different parts or different tasks and activities. And this can work for you or against you. And it does all the time. You know, whether or not we are getting in the driver's seat of this, it's happening all the time for all of us. And so this is a little bit tricky when you're dealing with an anxious brain. That's why anxiety tends to grow over time, unless we're actively trying to calm it down and strengthen the calming centers of the brain. Because when you've got an anxious brain that is anxious a lot, it gets better at being anxious as the anxiety centers of the brain grow and get better coordinated with one another, where they can fire quicker, more succinctly with one another. But this also goes in reverse, where if you're able to recognize that you're becoming anxious and then know how to calm that body down, again, in real time, while you're still moving through the tension and the stress, then you can reverse that. And so, again, calm, anxious brains get better at being anxious. This is also what happens with chronic pain. Your brain gets very good. A lot of what's happening with chronic pain is that your brain gets very good at perceiving pain. And we'll talk about this again in a different podcast, but just a little bit of an intro on that is that there's with chronic pain, and I think also with emotional pain, there's the initial experience of the pain, and then there's what's called the secondary response to the pain. So this is really more for physical, but there's emotional correlations to this, where your brain perceives the pain receptors activate, and then your body has a response to that activation. And it's the response, that secondary piece, that either amplifies the pain or reduces it. And that has everything to do with like calming down that fight or flight response. But it's the same thing relationally and emotionally with us, is there's the initial pain and then there's a response to that pain. And that's what we're going to be focusing a lot on, is how do we calm down those responses, engage the parasympathetic or the calming centers of the brain as quickly as possible, and then get our minds to a place where we can kind of start to shift gears. So there's a saying that I say often, that you've got to calm your body to craft or to prime your brain to change your mind. So we've got these three things that are always in motion in terms of change, trying to create change. You've got what your body is doing, what your brain is doing, and what your mind is doing. And those are three different things. They're not one and the same. And they have to go in this order. You've got to move through stress by calming your body down, priming your brain, and then changing your mind. And it doesn't go in reverse. You can't change your mind in a stressed out body. It's very much like trying to move a car when the clutch is in neutral and it's not in a gear. And so, again, that's why we're so focused on helping you to know how to calm your body down. There's a lot of myths around this about what helps and what doesn't help. First off, because you change your mind last, mind is more thought stuff. There's not a lot of necessarily talk that helps to calm down the body. A lot of what calms down the body is nonverbal stuff, physical activity. One thing that is very interesting about the brain that we all have in common is that our body was primed to connect a sense of calm with what is called bilateral movement. So bilateral movement is the activation of the right and left sides of your body in a rhythmic manner. So one thing that we all have in common, and we'll talk a little bit about this down the road, is that our brain was built in the presence of a lot of bilateral movement. When the baby is in the womb, the fetus is in the womb and is developing. That baby is being rocked back and forth as the mother is up walking around and going about her daily activities. And then when that mom sits down, that's when that baby wakes up and starts moving around. And if you've known anyone who's been pregnant, or if you've been pregnant yourself, you know how frustrating that is, because it's like, I need to rest. I never get a chance to rest. But, and like I said, we'll go more into the neurophysiology of this. But So there's a primitive tendency that's, again, biological. We all have this in common, where using the right and left parts of your body in a rhythmic manner helps calm your brain. Helps calm your body and your brain. So kind of going back to this whole idea that you need to calm your body down first. A lot of that involves some type of movement. Very rarely is a mind calm in a stilled body. It takes a lot of energy to get a mind to be still in a calm body. Oftentimes it's reversed. If you really want to calm the body down, you got to move that body. So exercise, there's a lot of kind of like, what's it called? These are the little buttons to engaging the parasympathetic. So you've got yoga, stretching, moving your body, doing some type of exercise. Laughter is actually kind of like a little button to engaging the parasympathetic. So is any type of singing. They found that singing helps activate some of the vagal nerves that are very dominant in the fight or flight response. And so singing, humming, that's why when you rock a baby and you sing and you hum to it, you're engaging so many different things to activate parasympathetic. Yawning is actually one way to activate parasympathetic. So I guess at this point, the main focus is that if you're feeling stressed out, before you try to change your thoughts, focus first on trying to calm your body. So calm your body before you try to change your mind, because you gotta get that gear in place before you can move the car. And same thing for those that you love. If you have someone that is stressed and you're wanting them to calm down, instead of just telling them to calm down, help them move their body, help them get a sense of connection, a hug. I call it safe physical proximity. Being near somebody that loves you is very calming to the fight or flight response. Singing together, doing some type of wrestling, or I don't know, like house play, horsing around at home, doing some breathing, meditation, laughter, yawning. Again, just trying to use those little buttons that quickly activate parasympathetic before you go into any type of problem solving mode. So I guess that would be the take home for today, is that for you and for yours, before you try to change your mind, first calm down your body. If you've got questions, comments, please let me know. You can email me, or you can post it on the Facebook, any type of our Instagram. Let me know, because I would love to integrate questions or comments that people have into the presentations that I do. So let's try to work on those things, and then we'll just go from there. Thank you.